Hello gents, welcome back to a brand new episode of the podcast. This week I'm with Chris and I was able to chat to him about networking, marketing and everything in between, why consistency is important, that kind of thing as well. So thank you ever so much for coming back and joining me once again. If you did take value from this episode, I'd love to know what you think in the comment section down below, and why not be subscribed so you don't miss next week. We'll be talking to someone brand new and exciting, and I will see you very, very soon. And I hope you have a great evening or night or day or whenever it is for you. And I'll now hand over to Chris to explain a little bit more about him and what he does.
So my name's Chris Mansfield. My business is Fusion, the business catalyst, and I put the right business people together with each other.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me, Chris, and welcome to the podcast. And, you know, as we were discussing just a moment ago before the podcast began, I think it's a really interesting thing that you do, because a lot of people can say, oh yeah, I've done my networking and this is how I found it, and, you know, this is the approach which I go into it with. But not a lot of people can actually say, this is what I do for a living, right? And this is my career. So the reason why I asked you on is because I think it's a very important perspective to gain on networking, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions, and especially people who are, you know, starting out in business, or they aren't necessarily 100% ready to jump into the whole networking world. You know, everyone who's been in business longer than a couple of years will understand quite quickly, I imagine, what the value is of networking. But at a base level, what is the point? What is the value? How does it really help your business, would you say, or one's business, not necessarily yours?
Yes, I think, I was very lucky in a way, in hindsight, looking back now. I didn't realise it at the time. But my first ever networking event was a BNI event. And I was sat in this room full of people, and nobody had briefed me as to what was going to happen. I just thought they were going to be business people talking about business, you know. And I was fascinated by all these people standing up and one by one and telling me everything about their business. It was great, you know. And then when the chap at the head of the table turned around to me and said, "Okay, so Chris, do you want to stand up and tell us all about your business?" I went, "Oh, not really." Nobody had prepped me for that. And at the time, I was a financial advisor. And they kept talking about this thing about givers gain and helping people first, and they'll help you back, which I think in many people's eyes is a bit counterintuitive. You know, like, well, I've got to do all this for you first, and then hopefully you might do something back for me. It's not always the way that people tend to think. They go, well, you know, if you buy something from me, I might buy something back, and that's not the way it works. So it's initially a bit counterintuitive, but I got it, and I realized that, you know, by talking to people about what they needed and seeing what I could do or who I knew that might be able to help them, it did start to come back. I mean, BNI always say, you know, the first year is the toughest, and the second year it gets really good, and that's kind of what it does. And I think a lot of people, when they go networking, they don't understand that networking is a slower burn than just going out and selling stuff. The problem is, when you're just going out and selling stuff in a networking event, they may not even be your customers. So you're trying to sell stuff to people that may not be interested in what you do at all. Whereas with networking, I think if it's done correctly, the key thing for me about networking is to go to a few events that suit you, your business, your personality, whatever it may be, and be consistent. Go there regularly, get to know the people, and be memorable, so that as and when or if the people in that room do need what you do, they think of you first. It may not be next week, it might be next month, next year, it could be 5 years down the line, and suddenly someone goes, "Oh, I need to talk to Carlton about a video. I'm now in a position to do some video marketing, which I haven't done before." So you need to be the memorable person, because they don't always want what you do now, but they may want it in the future. And when they do want it, they've got to think of you.
Yeah, and I think it's a really important point, because, you know, a lot of we talk about when we do marketing as well, and networking is a form of marketing, where, you know, we're talking about front of mind marketing here, right? Where, you know, as you articulated very well, you know, if you think, you know, or use me as the example, when you think video, you should think of me, or when you think of video marketing, you should think of me, right? But how do you get to that point, right? I think it's a mix between being consistent, as you say, but also tuning, and I think worrying less about how you actually come across, right? Because, you know, I ask quite a lot of people about what their thoughts on networking is, and how they really go about their marketing. But the main things for me is like, just try a load of stuff, because I think the main hurdle that people run into is exactly what you had maybe at the beginning of your BNI journey, which was, you know, oh, I've got to talk about myself now. I've got to have this perfect 1 minute pitch all about like what I do, how it's valuable, who it helps, etc. I mean, what would you say to people who are really nervous? Because I think that's the main hurdle, right? I don't know whether you found it as well, but the main hurdle I've found when talking to people about going networking is they just crumble about the idea of doing a 1 minute.
Yeah, well, I think that's the thing. And I think, you know, a lot of people that are very nervous about going networking would be surprised to hear that pretty much everybody else that goes networking was in the same position when they started. You know, it's a bit like when you're driving down the road and you get frustrated behind an L driver. You know, well, you were a learner once. You know, you need to remember that, and everyone's been through it. I think, you know, my journey in BNI, like the first couple of weeks were terrifying, doing that 1 minute pitch. I mean, I wasn't a natural presenter by any means. But once you joined and you were listening to what other people were doing and picking up the good bits, and then realizing how you could get a little bit more confident, and you got used to it, and you kind of went from preparing a 1 minute script a week in advance to maybe the day before, and then you forget the script because actually I know about my business. If I can't stand up and talk about my business for 1 minute, then there's something wrong, you know. And then you have to do your 10-minute presentation to the room. And by the time that came around, I stood up to do my presentation, and I'd done all this preparation. I had my laptop there and my PowerPoint and all that kind of thing. And it was the moment I stood up and looked down this table of people, I thought, I actually know all these people now. They're all friends of mine, effectively. They're all there wanting to listen to what I've got to say. And it made me feel much more relaxed about it. And then, of course, 20 years down the line now, I could stand up in a room full of people and just do a pitch about networking without even thinking about it. But that's taken 20 years to get to this position, you know. And I think the biggest thing that I find people seem to struggle with, and this is what I work with my own clients on, is getting the business to actually focus on what problem they solve. You know, you don't need a great big long menu of all the things that you can do. Fundamentally, what problem do you solve for your clients, and who is the ideal client that you solve that problem for? Because if you can get to that point very simply, when you're asked what is it you do, you can deliver something that's punchy and pertinent to that person. They go, oh, right, okay, that's interesting. Tell me more. And then you've got a conversation going, and you haven't got to do a 1 minute pitch. You know, that very simple question of, hi, Carlton, what do you do? With so many people doing networking, yeah, if you can come back with a response that says, oh, I do this, the kind of problem I solve is that, and I do it for these people. Oh, okay, tell me more. Once that conversation started, you're comfortable and you're away, and you've done that sort of breaking into the room thing.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to appreciate that, because a lot of the time when we start out in marketing or when we start out in networking, we want to, I think the misconception is we want everyone, right? We want to talk to everyone. We want to get everyone as business, and we want to have business from everyone. But as you say, what will end up happening is you need to actually ask yourself, well, what's your niche? Right? Like my niche is video. Okay, so who then would require video? Okay, people who want to have a way to articulate their message in a different way that isn't just written or images. Okay, sure, great, fantastic. So now I know roughly who I'm talking about. And I think one of the main things that people sometimes get overwhelmed by is when we say like, oh, you have to have your target audience. It's not a, this person is Sally and she is 35 and she has because yes, it might be Sally who's 35, but actually it's more about just having a rough idea of who you're trying to talk to, right? And then being okay with the fact that if you alienate someone else by saying that's okay, because they're probably not the person that you necessarily want to talk to, right? Like if someone has already, like, you know, a video skill set, or they already know definitely what they're doing with marketing 100%, and they've already got plans in place and etc. Of course, we can support them from the content creation side, but then I'm not going to be like, hey, so we can help you set up your marketing strategy, right? Because they've already got one, right? Like, So my approach would change. My approach would say, okay, well, what is your marketing strategy? How can I help that? How can I support that? Have you thought about doing it this way? Have you thought about utilizing this perhaps? And I think that's one of the main things about understanding who your target audience is, right? Like in the same, and I imagine you have a similar conversation with your clients about, okay, well, you're going to go into a certain set of networking groups and you're looking for specific people. I imagine, right? And saying, okay, well, who are those people for that client? I mean, how have you ran into some issues with your clients previously when they've really struggled to kind of grasp who that is?
Yeah, it is quite difficult sometimes for my clients or for people networking to, as I say, really focus on what they deliver. Bottom line, what do they deliver? We don't need a huge, great sort of drop-down box that you get on a website of all the things you do. I mean, I've often said if you bumped into a guy or a woman in networking who's the manager of the local Tesco superstore and said, "What do you do?" and they started running through all the products on their shelves. I mean, as opposed to saying, "Do you sell milk?" Yes, we do. Aisle 13 on the right. Do you know what I mean? Get to the point, rather than just saying, "What do you do?" and then delivering everything you do. And I think once a company can, or a business person can identify that, it makes the networking so much easier. The next question you need to have prepared for is, if you're talking to somebody that has the need for what you do, that they're already working with a good competitor of yours. And this is what I say to the clients I'm working with. So I'm in a room, I'm working for you. I find somebody who's a perfect match for what you do, but they're already working with your best competitor. What can I now say to them to get them to take a call or have a chat with you? And that's a really important question, because so many people go, "Oh no, it's all right, I've already got an accountant." Oh, okay, fair enough, move on, But to be able to then pursue that and go, "Well, does your accountant do this? Does your accountant do that? Are they happy with this?" And to try and see if there's an opportunity, because you have a specialism maybe to get that person to focus on that they're not getting at the moment. And always be mindful of the fact that, and you see this sometimes when people try to, I mean, discounting BNI, because obviously BNI is a lockout organization in itself, but some people do like to go into networking events where there's nobody else in the room that does what they do. And I've often said to them, yeah, but you've got to remember and be mindful of the fact that even if you're talking to somebody in the room that wants what you do, and you're the only person in the room that does it, why would they do it with you? They don't know you yet. They need to trust you, especially if you're talking about things like financial services or something really important in terms of intimate knowledge about a business or whatever it may be. You need to be mindful of the fact that people won't automatically deal with you just because you're the only one in the room.
Yeah, and I think it's a really important point, and it kind of leads on to my next question that I was going to ask you, because a lot of people will ask me, because the video space is becoming more and more competitive every day. There's more people entering it, which is fantastic, by the way. Can I just add, right? That's great, and I'm fully for that. And for me, I always look at other people who do similar to what I do, or they do something similar, and say, well, that they could be a competitor of mine. They're not necessarily, okay, maybe they are a competitor in one way, e.g., we're both trying to get work in the video space. Okay, but actually, can we collaborate here? Is there a way that I can actually, help them become stronger and help them become better and help them be like, oh, hey, have you done this approach? This approach has worked really, really well for us. Because the fact of the matter for me, in my experience, is someone who resonates with you as a person is more likely to work with you, whether they get another sales call from an identical company from someone else, or meet someone else at networking, or the following week they meet someone else. If they connect with you and that's kind of, it synergizes and you build a good rapport, or at least there's the hint at an idea of a good rapport, you're less likely to go somewhere else. And it's interesting that you mentioned about, exploring that further conversation in respect to, or what does your accountant do? Does they do this, etc. Because I find it really interesting, because what you're trying to do there necessarily is trying to understand, are they served and are they happy, right? Because I personally don't think that you should feel threatened as a business owner in networking. If you I go to networking and I've got clients from networking, so then I'm in a room sometimes with my clients with another video person in the same room as well, right? So then what happens? Okay, so this video person is going to talk about similar to what I do, but actually we're not competitors because they're going to do it their way, I'm going to do it my way, and that will resonate better with someone else, and vice versa, right? So I think it's a really important thing to establish that the world is actually plentiful in respect to work, right? Like, yes, of course, we're looking at a down recession and we're looking at harder times to come, of course, and that's something to be appreciative of and understanding of. But with that being said, there's still certain things that you're going to do or go the extra mile or put in the extra bit of effort or have a specific style that's going to fit better with a client. I mean, what would you say to someone who, maybe has been in business a couple of years, but is really struggling to kind of build this mindset of collaboration more than competitor? Because I've found it can be quite personal quite quickly. Like, everyone takes it really personally if someone goes with someone else on a bid or say etc. in that respect.
Yeah, I think you're right. But I would say in answer to that, that now is probably as good a time as any to think about collaborations, because one of the great things which a lot of people seem to miss, everyone's on the downer about COVID and how it knocked us all down and it was very negative. Mental health issues were abundant and still are, all those kind of problems. But we equally at the same time miss a lot of the good things that came out of it. I mean, for example, the world of online networking, some people absolutely hate it and they just can't bring themselves to do it. And I was a late adopter myself, because people were talking about going networking online. And I thought, I can't imagine anything worse than having 50, 60, 70 people on a Zoom call. Although how chaotic is that going to be? I couldn't get it. And the first networking event I reluctantly booked into, I was of a mind that I always had the leave button in the right-hand corner. I could always escape. I could walk out the room. No one would notice. No one would care, and it'd be fine. I could just walk out if it didn't work. But then I suddenly got this moment which made me realize, hang on a minute, this is a real golden opportunity that's come out of this. Because I can now network anywhere in the world with people I would never have met otherwise. And I don't even have to leave my dining room table to do it. I haven't got to go on a bus or a train or get my car out of the garage. I haven't got to park. I haven't got to go in the pouring rain. I haven't got to waste all that time getting there and back. None of it. I can network anywhere in the world without any of those restrictions now. And you think, wait a minute, this is a golden opportunity. And I think going back to what you were saying about the collaborations, there was an awful lot of collaborative stuff going on. You could see it on LinkedIn when everyone was locked down, shielding or whatever they may have been doing those first 3 or 4 months. LinkedIn became the great sort of lifeline for a lot of people. They were talking to people and they were seeing people were posting on there going, I've just lost my job. I'm in big trouble. I need some help. Is anybody out there looking for this? Can anybody help me? And people were actually actively asking for help, which was alien up until that point. And then you got people that were struggling in their, I don't know, a creative business or something. And they're going, well, I'm actually struggling. How are you finding it? And talking to other creative industries, and people within the same industry were going, this is really crap, isn't it? How are you getting on? How are you finding it? How are you getting around it? And they go, well, what if we joined forces? Even if we just crossed our ideas and had a discussion about how we could get out of this together, there was an awful lot of power in that, I think, and a number of people missed it. And now, of course, face-to-face networking is coming back, which a lot of people were hankering for. They thought the only way you can network is face-to-face. And they've left it for like 2 years. And now they're starting to dribble back into rooms and going, oh, great, I'm back networking. And you go, yeah, but you just missed 2 years. That was a golden opportunity that you've missed because you felt it couldn't work. And in actual fact, when people have said to me, oh, yeah, but you can't build relationships online. Yes, you can. It's down to you and your manner and your conversation. If you're just going to sit on a screen and try and sell people stuff, then no, it won't work if that's your idea of networking. But if you're going networking, meeting people in a room, breakout rooms you have on Zoom or on Remo platforms where you can jump around from table to table, and you can have a chat with someone and go, this is really interesting. I'd like to know more. Should we take this away? Let's connect on LinkedIn, and then we'll get an appointment in the diary and we'll do a one-to-one online. You've got no disturbance. You've got no background noise. You don't have people interrupting you. You've got a proper one-to-one, and you can really get to know people. You don't have to be physically in the same room. And of course, the other advantage you have is, as I found now going back into some networking events, is that you can get stuck talking to somebody that may not be appropriate or may not be exactly what you're looking for at this moment in time. And as you're talking to this person, you see the person you actually want to speak to walking out the room, and you go, oh no, I really wanted to speak to them. Well, now you can just connect with them on LinkedIn and go, hi Carlton, really interested to hear what you had to say this morning. Do you fancy having a one-to-one? Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, I haven't had anyone come back to me and say, no, I don't want to.
Yeah. And I think it's a really important point. I mean, you're building off what you were talking about during the first couple of months of lockdown. LinkedIn itself was, for a long time, this very corporate, very business-orientated, business-focused platform, right? But because of COVID and because of our habits as how we work, it's become a lot more early Facebooky, right? And for those who don't necessarily appreciate what that means, it was very kind of personality driven now, which I think is only a benefit, and as you say, there's a lot of huge benefits for online networking. For me as a company owner in Salisbury, there's only so much I can do locally that makes sense, right? But suddenly this online networking thing, I could be talking to someone in London, and then within the next half an hour to an hour, I can be talking to someone who's in Newcastle, or who's in Poole, or who's in Bournemouth, or who's in Salisbury, or what, etc. Right? Or, even in some cases, further afield, especially if you're a coach or someone who doesn't need to physically see someone in person, or you have a coaching aspect to your business, or you have a part of your business which is remote servable, e.g. you can do it remotely. Suddenly the world is your oyster, quite literally now, because people are used to having Zooms. They're used to, I've got a couple of calls later on this week with some guys in America, right? I never would have even thought about getting my head around that as a concept if it wasn't for COVID, because I would have been so limited by, they would never become a production client, so what's the point in having a conversation with them, right? But actually, there is people you can help, and there's people all over the world who you could help because of your experience, because of what you do. It might be, oh, Colton, how do you run a podcast? Oh, Colton, how do you do marketing? Oh, Chris, how do you do networking? Oh, I've got this problem in my business. Have you come across this? Or do you know someone, etc.? But you can have those conversations. You can build those relationships, as you say, through Zoom. And I think it's something that socially we weren't accepting for a long time, and COVID forced us to have to do it. And now I think I'll be shocked if it just disappears, right? I don't think it's actually going to go anywhere now, because a lot of people, and whenever I reach out about a coffee or a connection, I'm always like, hey, look, if you're local, let's grab a coffee, right? I'm all for meeting people in person, right? Seeing the whites of their eyes and all that. Sure, great, fantastic. But if it's impractical for them or you, go into a Zoom room, go into a Teams room, go into pick up the phone, right? There's other ways that you can do it, right? Because a lot of the time, we don't go to our clients unless it's a production day, right? That's the only time we'll really see a lot of our clients. Outside that, unless they're really local, but outside that, we'll pick up the phone, we'll jump on Zoom, whatever we have to do to have that conversation about whatever we need to have a conversation. But I think it's been a really interesting thing to see people accept. And also I think for us anyway, it's been a golden opportunity to create content, because more attention has been on the digital platforms that we connect through, right? So LinkedIn is a key example we've talked about today, but it leads into my next question quite nicely, which is, a lot of people during the starting of the lockdowns, and I think also now, because, as we said earlier, the fact of the matter is the economy is going to get harder, but what should people do with respect to marketing? Because I think for a long time there was a misconception around, let's cut our marketing budget as the first budget we cut, right? Now, in a world where you have a budget, right? The reality of the fact is some businesses don't have a budget, as in allocated to marketing, but you still have money that you can spend, and you need to choose how you're going to spend it, right? So what would you sort of suggest to people who, are maybe on the fence about continuing to spend their marketing, or people have said to us, it's like, I've got to cut something, and to me right now it feels like the best idea is marketing. What would you say to those people?
I think probably those people don't fully understand or don't appreciate the importance of the marketing. I think the problem is, it's a bit like saying, someone told me to go networking, so I went a couple of times, but it didn't really work, so I'm not going to do that anymore. Because you don't see the benefit of it. You have to understand with any form of marketing the duration that you might need. You need to know that the direction, the type of marketing you're going to be doing, whether it's going to be video, whether it's going to be pay-per-click, or whether it's going to be, Google AdWords or whatever it may
Or
be.
a combination of the above.
You have to understand. Yeah, that's it. You have to understand what those platforms do, the kind of audience they're appealing to, whether or not your product suits that particular audience. And then if you can find multiple facets that work for your product and your business, then you should be doing as many of them as you can comfortably afford. And if you can't do multiple ones, you have to try and work out which one works best for you. In my way of thinking, networking is not a mass audience thing. Obviously, you can't hit a huge audience at once. But having said that, you can connect with people through your LinkedIn connections. If you've got sort of 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 connections on LinkedIn, and you put out something that is likable and shareable, if you like, you can reach quite a wide audience to do, using that, and that's completely free. Networking online is largely very inexpensive. It's not probably free so much now, but there's no such thing as a free lunch, is there? And anything that's free probably isn't worth it. But you can select a few networking groups or events, the likes of which, where we met at TBN. I mean, not all networking groups are the same. TBN has a great structure, which is very attractive to an awful lot of people. And you've got a group there that's based originally in sort of Poole and Bournemouth area that now has an attracted audience from all over the place, because of its model and its structure. So not all networking events are the same. You need to pick a few that work for you and be consistent. Go there regularly. Be, as I said earlier, be memorable. And I think if you've got a proper understanding of what it is you really do, and you really know who the audience is, and you can identify them, and let's be fair about it, you need to be sort of a likable person. You can get that across online. You can go, well, look, this is what I do. I'm pretty good at it. I can help you in this way, shape, or form. If we get on, do you want to have a talk about it? And we can perhaps work together. You don't need to be standing in front of someone for that conversation. I mean, I've got 2 clients now who retain me on a monthly basis. I've never met them. These are people that I've met online, had a conversation about what we do. We obviously get on, and I've never actually seen them face to face, and I may never do. You never know. And going back to the point that you made about sometimes having your customers in the room, and there's somebody else in the room that does video. The best thing I found is if you're going networking and you've got your customers in the room, what a great testimonial is that? I had a conversation years ago in my early days of networking. Somebody said to me, I'm interested in what you do, and I suppose you've got testimonials on your website. I said, well, I have, but to be fair, I could have written those myself. What might be more pertinent and relevant is if you go and speak to him and her and that person over there and that person, they're all clients of mine. And they'll give you a testimonial about what I do for them.
Yeah. And I think it's
and it's so much more powerful.
And I think it's really important to build that level of trust and community though as well, because when people sometimes, especially when we're talking about something that maybe is quite expensive, we're trying to validate it, right? And what we're talking about here from a marketing context is that social proof, right? That's what testimonials are. They're social proof, right? The social proof that it works, or it works in certain contexts. And I think it's a really important point to establish that networking is one facet of an overall marketing effort, but there's a huge amount you can do that's very inexpensive, right? We all own phones. So, okay, yeah, sure, maybe you're not ready right now, or maybe the right time is not right now to bring someone like me in to do some professional content for you. Okay, that's fine. But you still should be picking up your phone. You should still be creating content, because as you say, you could reach hundreds or thousands of people by putting that online, as long as it's relevant and valuable and has a point to doing it, right? It's not, how was your breakfast? How was your day? It's, here's some tangible advice that I have come across a lot of the time. Like this podcast is a key example. We're giving tangible advice to people who are listening to start out networking, to start out marketing, to get their to get that approach and that ball rolling. Because I think something for me, and people ask me all the time, why do you do your podcast? Really enjoying it, blah, 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 blah. And I always say, for me, it's a place that I hope can be and provide the value content which I didn't have when I started out, right? From my perspective, this kind of content didn't exist. People openly talking about how do they run their business, how and why do they do certain things, and also to go into the approach or go into the world where, it's not a big issue because there is huge opportunity to grow even in a time where we can't physically connect, right? And we can't physically see each other. You just made a very clear example. You've had a couple of clients who you've never met. A couple of our clients who are now production clients, we first met in lockdown, and I didn't meet them for the first 3 to 5 months of our relationship, as in physically meet them, right? Even though they were in Salisbury. That's fine, because if you can still articulate how you can help and still work out ways around it, and as I say, develop strategies and develop services, which, whether that's coaching, whether that's remote content creation, whether that's going to networking for someone else, developing these other facets or these other skills that you can use completely remotely opens you up to a larger audience, or a lot larger of an audience base than just, I can drive to XYZ place, right? I can go to London, I can go to so on to create content for someone. Because I think, of course, we could fly out to America, but is that going to be cost effective for the client? Maybe not. Okay, so here's another idea. Why don't I liaise with the person who's creating your content to make sure it's along the lines that we've talked about in marketing? Okay, so then we can both win, right? But you're also not paying for me and my time, plus a flight, plus everything else that goes alongside that when it comes to creating the content, and then you can win in both worlds. And I think it's a really interesting approach that wouldn't have happened because if the pandemic didn't exist. But I'm sure I think we'll wrap up soon. But I think the core, if anyone's going to take away anything from this, is just start doing it. I mean, as a fine.
Absolutely right. Yeah, I mean, you're totally right there. And you said earlier about the collaborative side of things, and you mentioned, working with somebody in America. If you've got a good collaborative arrangement going with people who you might not have done otherwise, you go, well, all right, it's not going to be convenient or practical or cost effective for us to go to America. But through having a now broader network, you can actually connect with somebody, possibly through LinkedIn or through a networking event, and find a reputable firm that you can collaborate with that can do the work for you and still have a satisfied customer. And I think, again, going back to what you said about people cutting their marketing budget, maybe it's sometimes because they don't understand the lead-in time and how long these things take. If you want to go around a room full of people going, hello mate, do you want to buy a shed? Hello mate, do you want to buy a shed? Eventually you'll probably sell a shed, but it's not very practical. If you want to go networking, or if you're going to use any kind of marketing, you must be aware of how long that expected lead-in time is. And to be frank, if your business is in such a state, I've said this before about networking, if your business is in such a state where you need to go networking to get some new leads, it's too late. Because by the time you've built the rapport, met the people, met suitable people, met people that want what you do, by the time they actually convert into clients, your business will have already gone down the pan. So you need to be doing these things in advance. It's a great example of what you were saying. Marketing needs to be something that's constantly ongoing. Many people sort of do marketing, get some leads in, focus on the leads, forget the marketing, and then it goes around in a sort of vicious circle. Networking is a thing where you need to take your time. You mustn't be desperate for leads. You need to go into a room with the intention of seeing how many people you can help rather than how many people you can sell to. And you need to have some proper conversations to find out how. Because if you work on that basis, if you can imagine a room full of 50 or 60 people, all of whom aren't desperate, all of whom are trying to see how they can help each other, and they're all having conversations to find out how, the amount of work, connectivity, and business that's going to be done as a result of that is enormous, as opposed to having people just stood toe to toe trying to sell each other what they do. I can't stress it enough. It's it's got to be, give it the time, try and see how many people can help. It will come back. It will pay dividends for you. It really will. I mean, my whole business now is really based on the fact that what I've been doing for 20 years before.
Yeah, and I think it's
it's payback time.
yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a really important approach to start and establish and get within yourself. And as you say, if you're in a position where you have to go networking, you've now thought about, oh, we should probably do some marketing because we need work next week. Arguably, you've done it too late, right? That boat's already sailed, right? Like the problem is, like, and what I see with a lot of companies is, I can sort of guess, or one can sort of guess which ones are doing well and which ones aren't, right? Because if one is stopping their marketing, okay, well, why is that, right? Like, the ones that I think are growing and the ones that I believe are doing well are the ones that are consistently marketing, and I can't tell how busy they are because they're continually marketing, right? So that doesn't mean post daily. If that means you can post daily, great, fantastic. That means they're semi-consistent, or I'm seeing them at networking quite a bit, and I'm seeing this because it's, okay, everyone gets snowed under, everyone gets a load of work in theory. Great, fantastic. But you still need to allocate time to work on the business instead of in it. And if you can't, you need to then start outsourcing stuff to other people that you don't physically need to do, right? Because as you say, what will end up happening if you don't, it's not going to be a 6-month thing or maybe even a year thing. Eventually you will run out of business though. Eventually you will be in a position where you have to force the marketing hand, and doing marketing quickly can be effective, but it's never going to be as effective as doing it long term and slow and building that nurture, building that trust, building that and it's also a lot harder. And the thing is that a lot of marketers will tell you that, to be honest, most of us won't take on any jobs if the client's like, I need you to give me results in X time. And the reason why is because we don't necessarily want that overall pressure to be burdening on the overall marketing, because that's not, we can do the best marketing job in the world, but if it doesn't hit the right people at the right time and then has the level of nurture that it requires in that time as well, you're not going to get necessarily the work from it, because it is this know, like, and trust factor. The same is true of marketing, but also in the networking as well.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, I suppose the best example I've got of that was the fact that in lockdown, when I was having to shield and couldn't go anywhere, do anything or whatever, and I was sitting there panicking, thinking, well, networking has stopped for the foreseeable future. There's not only is there no networking coming back yet, but there's no signs of it coming back yet. What am I going to do? And that's when I kind of reluctantly turned to online networking, because I just didn't think it was going to work at all. But I put one post out on July the 12th, I think it was. I put one post out on LinkedIn, which basically said, this is the situation I found myself in through no fault of my own. I've had no income coming in for months. I probably spent more on Amazon than I should have done. Savings are going down. I'm going to have to go and get a job somewhere. If any of my contacts out here would like a BDM with my experience to help them come out of lockdown, then please get in touch. The response I got to that one post was effectively 18 years worth of networking connections coming back from people that knew and trusted me. And they were sharing the post to people going, Chris would be a great asset to your company. If any of my contacts would like to speak to him, get in touch. It was seen by 16,500 people in 3 days. And at the time, I only had about 3,000 connections of my own. So you can see how well shared it was. But the interesting thing, which really hit home, was really quite, it was very humbling, quite emotional, was every time it had been shared, the person sharing it wrote a testimonial. And that to me was the most powerful thing. And then you realize, when I said earlier, sort of payback, it was like all those years spent networking, building up that reputation and building up those connections, that when you needed it, and I did need it at that time, I didn't have time to go marketing or to the jobs. I needed some help. And you put one post out, and that black book, if you like, all those connections really came home and supported me at a time when I didn't have time. I didn't have 6 months or a year, but it was the networking in hindsight that paid dividends. That's where it all came back from. It was incredible.
And I think that's a really magical story, because I think it's something which we hear about in content a lot, and we hear about as well that, when things are fine and then you question, okay, well, why should I continue marketing? Why should I continue networking? Why should I still continue creating video? But what ends up happening is, as you say, when things do get maybe slightly rockier, that's when it could pay dividends for you, because actually what ends up happening, or for example, we've had people who have watched the content and I have no idea they're watching the content until they reach out to me and say, oh, I've been watching your content for a year, it's really helped me, I've gone from, being in a 9 to 5 I hate to now running my own business, blah, 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 etc. And things like that. And for me, it's like, okay, I've just got to keep going and I've got to keep showing up and I've got to keep being consistent. And the fact of the matter is, running a business is difficult. There's going to be times where you question it. There's going to be times where you think, okay, is this it, right? Is this the end? Is this the moment where all ends? And the fact of the matter is, if you keep on being consistent with whatever it is that you feel is right, and there's a lot of things in business that I don't think starting out business owners necessarily understand. It's a feeling thing. It's an instinct-based thing. I guess it's some experience, but for me, it's always been instinct. It's been like, this feels like a good idea. Let's go this approach. Let's try doing this more. And sometimes there's not any tangible results directly at the start, 100% from that thing, right? Starting this podcast was like, this seems like a good idea. Okay, has it directly got me work? No. But has it allowed me to nurture people who then have become, like, from leads to clients? Yes, absolutely. Has it helped me give me content to then post and help value and then sort of build a kind of level of like in that marketing world? Yes, absolutely. So, okay, how tangible is it then? Because it hasn't technically made me money, but it also has, right? And it's the same with networking. If you're consistent in networking, people are going to start to know you, and then you'll sporadically get an inquiry from someone who you've known for networking for 6 months. But then how do you justify that quantitably? Because at what point did it flip over? Because, oh yeah, I've made money now from networking, so I can continue to do it. But you might be one meeting away from it actually becoming work. You might be one piece of content away. Right, but so if you stop and you go, oh, it's not tangible to do, how are you going to know?
Well, this is the thing. You've used the word consistently, as I did earlier. Consistency is really king. You have to try a variety of different things initially, and as you say, see which one feels right, see which one works, which ones you start to get some interest from, and then pursue that to the best of your ability and to the best of your what your budget allows. So many people say to me, oh, God, I don't know how you can do all that networking. I went to loads of different networking events. It didn't work. But more often than not, when you dig into it, they've been to loads of different networking events once. And they've expected it to work because they think, well, all I've got to do is go and talk to a whole lot of people and I'm magically going to get something. But you forget that those people need to know and trust you. They're not just going to, you walk in the room and go, oh, I sell this stuff. Oh, brilliant. I'll buy some of that. But why would they? They need to get to know you. What you need to do is, first of all, enjoy your networking, because if you don't enjoy it, then there's not an awful lot of point in going, because people will recognize that very quickly. You'll be under pressure, your look will be wrong, enjoy your networking. You've got to find 3 or 4, 5 events maybe that you enjoy going to, because if you enjoy the experience of being there, it's more likely that good things will happen. So that's the first thing. But then when you've got those events that you feel comfortable at, and you feel not only might have the kind of people in there that you want as customers, and this is what a lot of people miss about BNI. I've had people say to me, oh, I tried BNI once, I went to this room, but there didn't appear to be many people in there that want what I do. Now, that's not the point. What you're doing is you're building this expanding awareness. You're talking to people who can then in turn refer you on. It's not about whether they want what you do. It's a case of how well connected they are and how many people they could connect you to. But you've got to be that likable, memorable person in the first place. Otherwise, they won't.
Yeah, because in part they're putting their own reputation on the line, right? Like, if I recommend you to someone, basically what I'm saying to them is, hey, this guy is really good at X, right? Whatever their X is, right? and you should hire them if this is something you'd be interested in. Or, you know, we see it all the time on LinkedIn. I'm sure you have it as well, where it's like, oh, I'm looking for someone who does, on Facebook, you know, for a long time, there was this big thing around looking for recommendations for a plumber or for a carpenter or for a mechanic or for a marketer, whatever you needed at the time, looking for recommendations for. And then people would go in and go, actually, oh, you should talk to this person, you should talk to this person, etc. And, you know, for me, it was always interesting to see when someone was looking for video about who the dominant people were who got recommended. Because if you're dominant, or if you're one of the people who gets recommended a lot, then clearly, what are you doing that stands you apart from others, right? Because, and this is what I always focus on, like, okay, how can I make myself better instead of, and it kind of builds back to that overall arching competitor and collaborator mindset. And it's like, well, actually, why don't I focus on me and put the same amount of energy I would be stressing over, oh my God, that competitor's going to take some of my work, and then use that to create content for me, use that to work on my business. How do I get better at ads? What are my weak points? Whatever it is that my weak points are specifically, okay, how do I get better at those, right? Focus in and double down on your strengths, so then you have the time to work on your weak points. And I think it's a really important thing to establish, but then also work on as you move forward in business. And if you still find things that you're still weak on and you actually don't like doing them, then find someone who's really good at them and go into either a business partnership or some way of collaboration with that person, so that the end client can get the best of both worlds from that reality. You know, we don't specifically do photography unless a specific client asks for it, but I can refer you to 17 different photographers that are a lot better than me, right? So, you know, will we do photography for some clients? Yes, depending on what the spec of the job is. But if there's a job that I go, to be honest, I don't think I can do that to the quality that I feel you need, have you thought about talking to this person, for example, right? Because yes, some of the same skills are true in regards to video and photos, but they are a completely different skill in the respect to how they go about it and the approach and so on. And there's key moments that you either get as video or you get as photos. And if there's two of you, you can get them as both. If there's only one of you, you're only going to get it as one. So, you know, that's just something to think about moving forward. I think let's start wrapping up. But I think, you know, for me at the end of the podcast, I'd like to give you an opportunity to throw in a topic or ask me a question if you have one, specifically. Maybe it's something that you've thought about through this interview or something that you've been just personally wanting to ask me. So is there anything?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of your own business, you know, you come across people, as I do, you know, through all the networking I do, you keep coming across people that do something similar. What is it that makes you stand out from other videographers, people that produce video marketing?
I mean, there's two ways I can answer this. I mean, there's a simple one, which is always the style of videos that we do and how I produce the videos myself, right? Every videographer or every camera operator has a specific style that they will look to create. From a layman's terms perspective, what do we do as a company that's different to someone else? What clients have told me, this is not even me, because I don't like to say this is what we do, because it's very subjective. But from what clients have told me, it's actually helping people understand why they should use video in the first place and how it can actually be tangibly used to potentially generate them new revenue. Now, we're never going to guarantee you new revenue, but what we're going to say is, okay, if you do this video, this video, and this video, and you put it in these places, then it could open up a sales opportunity for you. Okay, great, fantastic. That's what we want. Okay, so you know, for me, that's what I focus on. Other video production companies have their other skill sets, you know. I know some that focus on, we do the highest end of highest end of highest end of highest end video, right? But what they sometimes fail to mention is the points of contact where you're going to put the video. Why are you doing the video the way you're doing it? Who's going to be talking on the video if they're going to be talking? Why has the video got a voiceover? What's the video about? Etc. Things like this is actually arguably, I would say, more important than what is it shot on? What lens are we using? Are we shooting it outside or inside? How are we lighting it? These are all important factors to think about. What microphone are we going to use? These are all important factors to think about, but you have to do them in the order which makes relevant sense. So first establish what video you are going to create, or set of videos in most cases in my recommendation. Moving along with that kind of consistency is key. thing that we've been discussing today, and then decide what's best to shoot it on, right? And also where's it gonna, and then in line with where that's gonna go, right? The way you would shoot something for TikTok is not gonna be the same way you shoot a feature film, for example, right? Or there's certain budgetary challenges as well that you have to make a decision and make a compromise on, right? If you've got £1 million to spend, okay, you can go and hire an Airy, you can go and hire a Red, you can go and hire the top of the top end camera. If you've got £1,000 to spend, probably can't, because those cameras are £1,000 a day, for example. So if you've got £1,000 budget to make the project happen, probably shooting it on a Rarey isn't very a good idea because you're going to run out of money quickly, right? So, for me personally, that's what clients have said to me, but also what we've now sort of really started to articulate more through our content as well.
Yeah, and I think that's key. It comes down to the honesty of the business as well, that you deliver what's appropriate for the client, and obviously to try and match in with their budget rather than just trying to sell them more expensive stuff and hoping they'll pay for it. I met a guy online, before we did this podcast, who he's a CRM producer. Basically, he works with one particular CRM system, which is quite expensive. And he said the biggest key factor for our business is the fact that I will not let companies take this system on just because it's really, really good or singing or powerful, because most of the clients don't need everything that it does. And I have had clients actually say, no, I really, really want this system. And I've walked away from them because it's not relevant to their needs. And in a minute, they're going to find it really expensive and they'll resent it and all this kind of thing, And I think that is so key with businesses when you meet them networking, their honesty and their integrity of actually doing the right thing for the client rather than just trying to flog them whatever you've got in your suitcase.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important to understand that you need to be truthful, and it's actually a business owner's going to respect you a lot more if you say, actually, if I'm honest, I don't think you've got the budget to pay for us, or I think we're a little bit maybe we're not the right fit for you. But have you thought, and this is where your referrals comes in. If you've been marketing or you've been networking, you'll have these people to pass on to. Have you thought about talking to this person? Have you thought about doing this? Have you thought about doing that? And then you can still be valuable to that potential client, and then maybe give someone else a lead, which then becomes work for them. Great, fantastic. And what will hopefully happen is they'll have someone in a similar situation, but it'll be role reversal, where they'll say, actually, oh, you should talk to Colton because this is kind of not what we do. But actually, Colton is heavily experienced in this specific thing, whatever that thing may be. So why don't you go and have a chat with him and see if he can help you? Okay, fantastic. So then we're both winning. And then we're both in a business. And at the end of the day, the client's winning.
What you're doing there is talking about good quality networking, don't you? Because that's how it works. You get a reputation of being quality of what you do. It doesn't suit every single client. You can collaborate with other people who are more appropriate. They will return it to you in the future, and the world goes round. It's and that's what it's all about, as opposed to you just trying to flog everyone your services and hoping they'll buy it.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, the client gets the best fit for them, right? You're not trying to fit a square into a circular hole, right? Just make sure that you're getting a triangle and putting it in a triangle hole. Right, then it will work, and things will just happen, and everyone and the response. The sooner you start, that's the key. The sooner you start, the sooner the results will start to happen. As long as you're doing it right. Okay, if you're not, let's look at why you're not. Let's see why those results are not there. What are those results? How are we going to choose what those factors are that we choose? How to know, and then 6 months down the line, 3 months down the line, etc. Is it happening? Is it happening the way we expected? Okay, if it is, great. If it's not, why not? And I think it's really important, but I'm conscious of time. So, where, for those people who are interested in, possibly hearing a little bit more about networking or seeing how they could help you, perhaps, where's people best to reach out to you? And, in that respect, where's that best to start that conversation with yourself?
I think probably on LinkedIn. Connect with me on LinkedIn and just send a personal message on there and start a conversation. That's always the best way. You can visit my website, but to be fair, the website simply says what I do and gives some examples of the kind of clients I work with. Now, to me, conversation is always best. If someone's interested or wants to know more about what I do and how to do it. Always happy to spend some time chatting to somebody and saying, well, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Or recommending different networking groups that have worked for me and why they've worked and why they haven't, that kind of thing. Another good little book to get is there's a book I found a little while ago now called And Death Came Third. For anybody that's getting new to networking that is terrified of the concept of that, and then Death Came Third is a good book. I think it's about 11 quid on Amazon or something. And it's based on the concept that when asked what were the three things that frightened you most, one apparently was public speaking, two was walking into a room full of strangers and having to engage with them, and death came third. So that's the concept of that. And it's a book about networking and overcoming those kind of fears and getting your head straight. So there's a little tip. Grab that from Amazon and have a read.
Thank you so much for watching, ladies and gents. I hope you took value from this episode. I'd love to hear what you think in the comment section down below. And if you are new to the channel, why not subscribe? It's free and you can change your mind a little bit later. And that's me for this week, podcast-wise anyway. I'll be back very, very soon with some new content, talking about some more relevant topics on video. But if you want to have a one-to-one with me and hear a little bit more about how video can help your business, feel free to find my information somewhere around this video, and I'll be sure to get in contact about a meeting or a call. And I look forward to hearing from you very, very soon. And I hope you have a great rest of your day, evening or night, whenever this is that you're consuming this wonderful bit of content. And I'll see you very, very soon.